So welcome everyone, and tonight we had the honor to invite Alessio and Runze to our campus, and they're gonna talk a little bit about their project, Game of Deletion. So Alessio is now working for Morphosis, and Runze is working for Kilogram. And they graduate from SciArc this year, and their thesis project, Game of Deletion, is rewarded as the Gary Prize, which means the best thesis of the year. And their thesis is mainly focused on AR and urbanism, might not, and also something else that they're gonna introduce to you guys. So let's welcome Alessio and Runze.
So good night everyone, and thanks for staying here until late. And so me and Runze work on Games of Deletion for, I can say, not the last semester but also the last year, as we start to research augmented reality as a media. We approached augmented reality during our first vertical studio because we were kind of over with the architectural approach, a formalist environment that SciArc has. So we were like, what should we do? Should we do something new? And I personally got into AR because it was a very interesting media that I saw. I was not attracted by the utilization of the media itself, but more like the potential that this media have and what can be offering to people as designers like we are. So Games of Deletion, I don't know if you have any experience with this project. I will try to describe it as better as I can, and if there is any question, please just stop me and just say something. But basically, it's a mixed reality game that involved urban scale as a main aspect, as a main factor. So we took the sample of Los Angeles as a city, and we thought, what if we have this augmentation that comes to a real scale, so we can perceive it in everywhere we go. But also, why should we do it? Like, why should we start and use our application and see nice stuff around, or what actually we should be seeing? Because what we were frustrated also about these technologies that many contents that we saw around were missing, were lacking of information, was lacking of a purpose, and we were struggling to say, why should we use AR for what reason? And that's why we built a game, because a game usually has some rules and help you to understand a narrative, a dynamic of what you actually are working on. And Games of Deletion, maybe you can play the video without volume, just to don't have just me talk.
Maybe just let it first look at this video first and then you start.
Yeah, maybe better. So let's do this like
so
introduction.
This is the video of our final layout. You have 6 screens, but now we just have 1 screen, so you guys can imagine like what it would be look like with the 6 screens.
So this was the promo, and then we have like different videos that we will play during the presentation to don't boring you with our talk, so we can start talking forever. But as you see, more or less in this minute of video, there is a presence of digital content into the city. It might be looking cheesy from a first sight, but actually what we were trying to do was having a relation between this technology and architecture. And it was very hard in the first moment because when you use technology and architecture, you're labeled as technology person, and you almost struggle to be part of what everyone can call design, something like that. So we tried to think about what if we use this media to impact culturally the city and having like an extension of the space according to certain rules. And there have been a lot of evolution into the project. In a first moment, the project was just like a very arcade game. It was 1 against 1, and it was implying some political consequences. For example, I'm from LA, and you're from another city that can be Tokyo, can be somewhere else. And we are playing this game, and I can augment my city, like a space in my city, in your city. So it becomes like in a tomorrow where we will have all like augmented reality filters, I can be more present into your environment than you can be more present into mine. So there is also like a game of politics included into it. And also the other key aspect was like, what if we have this digital content and it becomes tangible because it's so important and becomes a facade into the city. And since we cannot touch it, since we can see just only through this filter, how we can distort the reality, creating an impact. And just like if you have this feeling that in our experience into the city, we actually see a lot of things, but we never actually touch them, we could argue in a second point, in a second moment, that actually we never experience that thing as much as we see that things. So vision is the first filter, is the first media that we are using for getting information into the city, because we never care about touching a facade or touching a part of a building that is miles from us, you know. So that's why digital and physical comes compelling at the same moment and has the same importance, and as designer we try to treat them in the same way. Maybe Runze can talk to you a little bit about how we got there and why we started to think about deleting instead of adding some content, and then maybe we can see some other media in the city.
Yeah, so I think simply put, our game can be defined as a AR/MR mural game. So let's first talk about AR and MR. So I don't know if you guys understand like what's the definition of MR. So MR can actually define as so if you from now on, if you heard someone talk about MR, it's actually meaning a way how this virtual technology combined with the reality, the physical environment. So it can be dealing with VR, and it can also be dealing with AR. So when you talk about mixed reality, this guy is not actually specifying which medium he is talking about. But visually, MR also, like in terms of experience, MR is also about this feeling that this kind of phygital experience that is cutting through both the physical and the digital. So for example, if you are doing VR with MR, you can visualize your virtual content in the VR headset, but you can overlay the virtual content with the physical thing. So you can set a virtual table in your VR headset. You can use the inside-out tracking so that you see a virtual table in the VR headset, and whereas this physical table is actually here. Or you can do AR with MR, which means you can, for example, when you use your phone, look at the table, this piece is being stretched out. So, which means in that way it's another kind of interaction with the reality. So when you talk about MR, it means a kind of very involving experience with both physical environment and virtual environment. So that's what. So actually, the reason why we use AR is because we're still using the phone, the overlaying of interface. But actually, this project is more about MR. It's more about the experience cutting, intersecting both the physical environment and the virtual environment. So from there, the first point of our, the first, let's say, very important period in our project is when we discovered the occlusion, like the depth mask in Unity. So it's something that can help you occlude the physical environment, which means you can finally hide a virtual object behind the physical wall, let's say. And then starting from there, we try to dig more into that direction so that you can create this more three-dimensional and interactive feeling. And this is about AR and MR. So the second one is mural. Why we use mural? Because we all know that murals are already 2D information. So with this kind of 2D tracker, you can instantaneously generate this kind of visualization. So with, let's say, AR Core or other like space tracking, you still need to first create an experience before you finally get to the point to the real content. So, for example, if you create a object in AR Core, you need to always place your phone at the same point of origin to generate that. Or you can use actually CB to help to let the machine to train exactly the way so that this machine can help you recognize object, but it's not really efficient. So, and there are already so many physical 2D information in the city, so we just leverage that and create this this digital experience instantaneously. And the second point is mural are real scale. So it has this very scalable quality that can, for example, if you put these trackers and print them as a stack of paper, and you can experience in the paper scale. But then when you look at the mural in the city, the scale instantaneously changed to the real scale. So the scalable quality is very important in this project. And then we talk about game, when we use game. So 3 points. The first one is game is very relevant in LA. Entertainment is very, so it has this kind of very specific, so it's like when you talk about LA, you will think about the cinematic feeling and this really artsy experience in the city. And the second one is, as we thought, game is a way to help people concentrate in a service providing for them. So they are being immersed in a game and doing something for them for their own entertainment. But if this game is specifically designed for some other purpose, there are a lot of contingent value can be obtained from this game. So because this AR medium is cutting through both physical and digital. So for example, now it's just a project about murals. If you think about now, the buildings are always being established by this prefab module. So if in the future, all these modules has a virtual clone in the game, and when you play with, you can actually just delete out any part of the city, and all this information will be gathered, and it can create some reference for further development and redevelopment. So it's actually very potential. So you're doing your own entertainment, you're personalized in your own digital experience, but all the experience actually can provide those contingent value for some serious development. So, yeah.
Can I ask a question? So do you guys know what is mural? Yeah. So the way it's matching with the AR, is that based on, let's say, like object recognition and pattern recognition, or it's based on location? Or it's GPS or VPS?
It's not GPS, because we tried VPS and GPS, it's not really stable. But at that time, there is only one single frame VPS, which means VPS is like this visual position system. So when you look at one frame in the city, it will help you match the database so that it can tell you where the location is, but it's not that stable. But we haven't tried the multiple frame VPS. I think that might be better, but I'm not that positive about it.
So when you are holding the phone and to the mural, how can it recognize that it's matching the pattern and then generate the augmented geometries?
So when it works in this way, like I will put it simple, like have you guys ever used Vuforia? Someone? Like it's the easiest approach to AR, and it's actually the best right now. Like there is not other, believe me, there is not other like firm or company that is doing better than that. Because also we are witness of this, because when we went to Augmented Reality Expo in San Francisco, Vuforia was just the biggest thing. So we were like, oh wow, Vuforia was everywhere. And we believe that Vuforia, it's just the starting point for every other one. So I guess, I don't know like a lot of things about the politics of how this media is being developed, but I'm sure that in Apple, Android, there is some connection between them, because they develop the same things in the same time that Vuforia released a new version of something. Like when we discovered AR, like Vuforia was a very basic asset of Unity. Right now it's much more powerful. You can do a lot of stuff out of the box. You don't need to actually code, even if code comes helpful if you want to actually make a project that changes like these templates, and it's key if you want to just go in with this media. But like coming back to the question about the mural, when you just like are framing a mural, your camera is tracing some points, and these points are based on the contrast and the outlines of your figure. So what the camera is looking for a network of information where you can anchor your like digital information that you are releasing on the image. It just works as a simple projection. It's basically a projection that is merging the render of the camera with a render of geometry. And there is a texture behind the render that is the video background. So it means that it's the camera. And it's matching the environment, building planes that you actually don't see, but it's building these planes that gives you the sensor perspective. So actually it's a very dumb exercise, but at the same moment it's not very easy to achieve, because if you, for example, if you take a video with your camera and then you take a video with your camera under AR application, the quality suddenly decreases because it's not the same thing, because you are rendered frame by frame. What Runze was saying with like one frame or multiple frames for recognizing the city, it's actually a huge shift, for understanding your position in the space, because you have like multiple points that your content can be anchored, let's say.
So maybe I can explain more about what's this anchor. So just imagine, it's actually different. So for the tracking mechanism for Vuforia and the image tracking mechanism for ARCore and ARKit, they're actually different. So for Vuforia, it's constantly tracking. So which means when you see an image, the camera, the machine vision will recognize this image.
Mm-hmm.
And when you change position, it's keep recognizing it, which means it's keep putting your content to this position. Whereas in ARKit and ARCore, it actually, when you recognize this image, it just create an anchor there. And he forget about this image from then. And then he only recognized that anchor.
Using the anchor.
Anchor just like a virtual position, like where you can stick your object in space. So that's why, I don't know if you guys have this experience, when you open Euphoria, after like several minutes, your phone will become super hot because it's constantly using your CPU and GPU. But for example, if you're using AR Core, it's better. So this is about efficiency.
So if there are not like questions, I just would like to play one video from our last presentation, just to have like a kind of back and forth between medias. And this is like, this video is, there are videos that are made in CGI, there are videos that are real time. The only reason why we use CGI is because we belong to an architecture school and sometimes professors are not happy about a real time technique. And also I wanted to spend one word about this, like I know that in the end professors care about pinup and your presentation, but like it's very helpful to spend time on these techniques. It's the most important thing, even if it doesn't look amazing. But I need to say, like, my personal experience has been that we were a team, so like I took charge of all the presentation, and I kind of regret that I didn't spend much time on learning something else, because that actually what you need for keep going with this media in the future. So this is like kind of a video that explains our very first idea about interfacing of spaces and the deletion of the city itself.
Database location and 3. R for people ledger room. 1147 Hope Street, 2015, Los Angeles, California. Now, delete. More players before the erasing and recomposed row. Look around you for joining the meetings of deletions.
Yeah, it was just a video to explaining the idea. Like, you need to imagine that we prepared this presentation for our final thesis. So there were all a scenario around, there were all a reception built around the project. There were a big, huge model in front of the screen, and that were, let's say, reproposing all the sides. This is the model, and there were 6 screens, and we're reproposing all the sides. And this is like the actually real application build that works exactly like you see in the videos, and does exactly the same thing. But it's a real time, and of course it's sort of a different experience. So maybe Runze can spend some words about it.
Yeah, so there are like several techniques I use here. The one is like the colliding and the physics. Like it's pretty easy in Unity. So here is like this. So this one is a customized shader I did in Unity. So here is a 3D one centimeter model, which is textured. And with this shader, you can 3-dimensional occluding the content behind by the position you are at. So in that way, it can create this really real feeling that you're actually looking through the deletion. And that's pretty much about it.
Regarding the shape, we personally built this the composition of the mural, and it was pretty much like an artistic exercise. We just used the outline from the murals, and we grabbed some pieces and we made it like a sort of a fun deal to delete stuff and see what there is beyond it. But the main point is opening portals for a reason, and not because we like opening portals around the city. And this is also something that is very important in AR. Right now there are a lot of tools available. Geolocation right now is becoming pretty stronger. We are now working on new projects, and we are going to explore new way to build these applications. But for sure, we don't want to just fall back into a very simple build scene that is not leading anywhere, because at that point it becomes literally just a sort of nice effect, but something that had that distinguishes this project from many other AR experiences is this sort of multi-user platform. The games of Deletion was meant to be this sort of a connection between users and how users interact together in the space with motion. So it's something that is very natural and eventually can lead somewhere else in a very close future. Yeah. And maybe there is the video belonging to there are the scenes that are built in real time, and then you can show just a very quick video for just explaining what Runze video just said about diffusion. Yes.
You said you had to build the model behind it so that whenever you are in position, you see the window frame like a portal in that perspective. So when you had the picture of Tokyo in one of the murals, did you have to rebuild that, or was it just the placement of the picture at a distance so that it gives you the illusion of it being in 3D space?
So it could be both, but the reason why we did that is we rebuilt the model and texture and everything, is we want to see what's the difference between, because you can't just put a 360 dome and put a texture map. But we tried that because, but the experience is somehow not that real. Because when you're walking toward that, it should create, so the scaling of this frame should not be that dramatic. But when you create a dome, you don't really know what should be the real scale.
Right.
So by using that, we can first create the real size. In Unity, it is using metrics. So you can literally create the same size, same scale. And then you put the same scale model and let it visualize. So the scale is exactly the same. So in that way, you will feel it is very real. Somebody asked, asked during the final interview, they asked if it's just an image. I said it's not. It's actually 3D model. But it creates somehow that you feel it's a 2D image because it's very far away from you. But when because this kind of very nuanced difference really can let your brain feel this is real. So it's actually very important to rebuild the 3D model.
And is your phone computing every frame as it's and it's viewing, picking up blocks differently, and
So what I do is I create a shader, which is called stencil shader. So in this shader is like if the material and this shader they are creating the same boolean, then you can see through. If they're not, which is outside the boundary, they have the different boolean stencil boolean factor, and then they will not see through. So just that. A very simple stencil shader in Unity.
And also, to get back to your question, I think your question is basically all our project.
Yeah.
Interesting one question.
It's the
Because
core technical issue.
it's totally about that, what we did. Like it's totally about building the scene, and like you see in this video, there are 3 main components. Like 1, okay, 1, 2, and then the blue one that you see here. So that 3 components are mainly like the pink one is the environment. So it's actually the reality. And then there is something in here that creates this sort of connection with the non-reality. So it gives you a sensation of that. Then there is the background that you said like is a video, is a model. What is it, right? It could be everything actually. It could be a real-time footage of somewhere in the city. And that point wouldn't be fake, it would be like actually a real thing, but it's still pretty fake because it's something that is a texture. So since it's a texture, or since you build a model, or you might be doing a combination between these two, you could actually create very good illusions behind. And the main contrast we had, during our thesis semester with the professors were like, if we put something behind that is similar to actually the real background, we create this sort of deletion, right? Like we can call it deletion because you're literally deleting the building. But if you actually don't do that, and you just put something that belongs to other places, you are interfacing spaces. So it's totally a different project, but it's using the same techniques. So that's a very relevant.
So maybe we can walk you guys through this occlusion thing step by step. This is like a very core technical demo. So this is like
the demo is showing the 3D configuration of vertical as exclusion
So this is the first time we used the occlusion, trying to put the content in the mirror. And then this is the first demo we did with the mirror.
That version goes snapshots of the image trackers, which also bring the augmentation to the real scale.
So this one we're just using a video, not the model. So you can actually sense a very little difference. And it's not changing when you keep moving. So this is another demo we did. It's like trying to create a live boolean effect. We have some other demo before the final one. It's just like the boolean difference in right now, but it's real time.
And also I would like to point out, like in this video, you see there is no interface because it was all touch screen. So it was a choice every time to don't create any sort of interface on the reality because you want a full immersion, like in the scene.
Yeah. So this is the scalable thing I'm talking about. You just work on the miniature version, and then you look at the real scale, it just instantaneously became real scale. So this is the application of that real-time boolean shader. So this is the first one I put the 3D model there, but this one I didn't calibrate the scale. So, and you can see it's actually a little bit glitchy and the scale doesn't match. But this one is the shader already. So this is a 3D model behind the deletion. Yeah, this is the one you just saw.
Maybe we can stop 1 second and see if you guys have anything to say, because we just keep talking, right? You know. maybe telling us about your work. Like I just talked to Kaiho before, and from what I understood, you guys are using technicals like machine vision for your project. So you're aiming to just like distort the reality, distort windows, and this is more or less what we are trying to do from a technical point of view, but then we are just doing it through another media that is augmented reality. So if you just want to talk about your project or do any questions, feel free to.
I have a question about, you refer to it as like a game. I'm wondering if you're in development, or did you develop like an app that we can all download? Or is that something that's even on your mind?
Well, definitely. Yeah, it is. Like I told you before, like architecture school is pretty insane. It doesn't give you the time to do things seriously. Everything you do remains a prototype. And you know, prototypes are pretty basic, and when you just go to pitch them, nobody's interested in seeing a project that is half done and half not done. So what we're doing now, we are just probably building a smaller experience that is reserved to the art district of downtown LA. It's gonna take time. For the real first demo, I think it might be available during the next exhibition of A+D. I don't know if you are familiar with this museum. It's just like a test. We're testing it. That's the good word to use. We're building different versions of the game that are very like limited and controlled experiences, and we're letting it test it before to spend energy and time on a long-term project. Because probably if we just do it seriously as we described it in this presentation, it might be taking years, because we're dealing with urban planning basically. First of all, urban planning, and then like building content for all of these things. So you are developing on two different like paths. That is the first way, content maker. So something that as architect we are pretty much naturally included into this category. The other part is more like scripting and organizing all this content. So game dynamics and like connection between these users. So these are the main two things that you need for creating something like that. But if you're interested at A+D, there may be something long in the future.
I feel like if it's a thesis project, you can just simple. What are the targeting users, and how much time you want them to contribute in this game, and like what's the short-term and long-term goal, and what's the user case, and what's the user experience, and how to design the UI, all those things. They definitely need a team to build out all those things. And we definitely want to push that, but so far the main problem is the single player version is working, as you can see the demo, so it's not that hard. The problem is for the user experience in multiplayer. So now if we just think about the marketable devices as mobile phones, they can only create, because they don't have like HoloLens, the depth mask, the depth camera. So every time they need to start at the same point of origin, so that they can share the same experience, even with Google Cloud Anchor or something. So, or you can use the VPS, but it's, like I said, it's not that stable. Because for this kind of game, you need super accurate overlapping with the scene. So image tracker would be the best. So we're still pushing the technologies to see how to maximize this kind of user experience, the multiplayer user experience. Yeah, it's definitely not that easy.
Also related to what Izzy is saying about the user experience, just imagine like a scene where you are like in a place or in another place. Like, I just want to put it simple to be able to get into much details and warn you, but please do question if you want to, because I think that if you're working on these aspects, you probably need some information. Like, when we tried to build a multi-user version, there were like two different paths that we went. That is like I'm here in LA, you're there and somewhere else, I don't know where, and we are interacting on the same scene, but in two different locations. So my space is not your space. And the only reference I have is the image tracking.
Yeah.
But the image tracking might be not actually like this, but might be like that, or like that, or like that, or
I
like
feel
that.
like I can name it like non-linear scalability.
Experience something different. So have you had a chance to maybe show the artist or like collaborate?
So regarding art, and then maybe Runze can keep going with the conversation, like we try to contact a lot of artists actually, but these artists are very huge names in LA above all. I mean, we never care honestly about murals in itself. I think we both have a totally different aesthetic, and we both prefer to design different stuff as architects or designers.
Yeah.
But I can say that we use murals because murals are all over the places and they are a perfect tracker for the experience. It would be great involving artists, and we are including this idea in the next developments. That's why we're trying to collaborating with a museum, because you go in a museum of art and artists can be like motivated in joining your crew and joining your project. LA, it's a very like mural city and has like a very strong heritage, and for sure I think, thank you. And we can, for sure LA would be like a great place to start the experience, because you have like a lot of artists that comes here just for doing murals. And also I want to point out like there are a lot of experience of mural augmentation. This is not the first one. We actually saw one in front of our school. It was called like mural reveal, something like the AR mural reveal. That is the new way that artists engage the audience with murals. But like I've never seen any sort of effort in connecting all this digital information through physical media. And this goes toward another conversation that maybe Runze can keep continuing, and it's more about data visualization into the built environment. That's something.
So, because one of the possible way where this project might go is like, because I think for AR and VR, one very strong feature is it can create this kind of multiple sense experience. So, and not just about the mural artist, also about, for example, the project we did, all the sound effect and music is done by Alessio. So for those like music composer and for those musician and artists, they can create this kind of environment. For example, for each mural, we just combine those different artists together. For example, the muralist, the musician, architect, and UI UX designer, and let them work together like a hackathon to create like in-that game just for this mural. And one thing we need to point out is those murals, the lifespan for this mural are actually very short. For example, if you create a game for this mural, maybe it only lasts for 3 months, and after 3 months it's gone. So it will let the citizens and let the users or tourists just want to experience it before it dies. So I think it's another way to push this project, and there are actually a lot of possible ways to make this thing real. We're still thinking about which one is the best, but so far we're still trying to deal with the technical issues. Yeah.
I want to say something. So I think, the reason we had them here for the lecture and for the introduction is I felt the things you guys are doing has a lot to align with not just our studio topic, but also the larger agenda that Greg has expected for the studio and as well as for the seminar is because from you guys we see a very strong connection between architecture and also the most cutting edge technology. In this case is the AR or MR as you say, and also an entrepreneurship. I think that's a very valuable thing to have because we are in California and we're doing things with very advanced technologies, and having this kind of entrepreneurship would help us to think about how we can bring the knowledge we have from the traditional architecture discourse and combine with a new kind of technology topic. In our case might be machine, robotics, and in your case might be vision and AR and MR, and bring this to something very interesting. So for our seminar, we just had a midterm on all the research on machine vision, as well as they proposed a workflow, like what they want to do with these certain types of recognition. And the next step is to have some sort of speculative project. And this project could be, for some group, they are redesigning a chair so that the chair has different cameras, and the chair, they can work together to formulate a new kind of intelligent office furniture system. For some group, they are redesigning the facade of one wheelchair. So when you're using AR or when the machine is looking at the facade would appear something different. And for some group, they are doing research on the stairs in Malibu, different stairs or different terrain, or even hiking routes, to use machine vision to determine what would be the appropriate, what would be the next step, like on the stair. Some stairs are broken, but they are using this kind of technique to know which step, where should I walk next. So I think after the midterm, we are like at the edge of thinking how the project can be pushed into next step. Because what we did for the first half of the semester is more like exercise and research, right? You guys look at different representation. You guys look at different techniques of machine vision, and you guys look at different elements in architecture. And thinking now, I think it's a time to think about how they can put these things together and to formulate something interesting. In your case, it is the game of Deletion. So I'm wondering whether you can talk about like how, because I knew at the studio, you guys were doing you guys started the Deletion idea in the studio where you were using robots and green screen to kind of using Deletion on the architectural compositions. I'm wondering how that discourse on architecture is translated in this kind of urban and game topic.
So as Kaiho is kind of summarizing our little games of Deletion thing, we met during a vertical studio and we worked together almost for 1 year. Our teacher, Devin Weiser, I don't know if you ever heard about her, but she just assembled a group and she wanted us to push this media into the studio and see what comes out of it. A little bit like it's happening right here. Like you take a technology, you push it, and you see what's going to happen there. First, I want to say the teamwork is crucial. Like you really need a lot of people working with these things. You cannot do everything alone because there's a lot of stuff to think about. Like, and you need to be focused on only one thing and do it very nicely. You cannot do, like, usually architecture so it's like, do this, do that, do that, do that. That's not the way to do something very nicely. And more from a theoretical point of view, we start to use augmented reality in the same way actually we're doing now. But in a first moment, we were doing much more like a trivial trial, let's say, because we had models, and these models were like, usually architecture model are pretty much give you it's very hard to express as a feeling, but when you see a model, you see like an object that is complete. It's like a very well done piece of art that you really want beside you and you really want to expose to someone. So we try to say, what happens if we have like a half model or something that is like without informations? And it gives you the idea there is something incomplete, like non finito. That's the right reference that we went for. And this non finito gives you, right, the possibilities to expand your visual medias through digital information. So what happens if we have an object that is half real and half not real, or visually might be looking whole, but there are parts of it that are actually digital for some reason in particular. Like in the environment of the studio might be that the digital information are just for a representative purpose. So we just want that part that is pink to be digital and the part that is blue is going to be physical. But in real life, under an entrepreneurship aspect, might be that these digital content are information that are actually very relevant for going through a physical space. So you really need that digital information, as we today use smartphone and we just go around with Google Maps. And then there is also like another talk about Google Maps that maybe you can talk about. But like that's just a very basic example that we can say, okay, we need information that complete our physical model. That was the very first approach in studio, and I think it's very common for an architect arriving at that point.